And a big welcome to today's Midday Masterclass. Today's session is all about navigating the retailer. You will learn insider tips and insights which will be key to your ongoing success. And so today I'm really delighted to welcome again Stephanie and Sarah from S&S, who with their wealth of knowledge and experience will be able to guide you through to ensure you choose the right path for your brand. Please do add your questions onto the Q&A, and they will try and answer as many as possible at the end. And we will also give you their contact details after today's event if you want any more advice or any more understanding. I'm really looking forward to today's session, so a big welcome to Stephanie and Sarah.
Thank you so much, Linda and Jessie, for having us today. It's a delight, as always, to be back and to be able to talk some of our favourite things with everyone. And thank you to each and every one in the audience as well for taking the time out, because I know it's a lovely sunny day out there and I'm sure most people would love to be out in the sunshine. So hope you get some time to enjoy that. So we'll go through the presentation.
And as Linda mentioned, please do drop any questions in and we'll try our best to answer them at the end.
So a little bit about who we are. So who is S&S? We're a 360 retail, digital and brand marketing consultancy. We're a new startup, essentially. We started at the end of the summer in 2020, so in the middle of the pandemic. And we've got a very varied background, really. So we come from the lovely training ground of Selfridges. We've done a few years together across that brand, and also have done brand side and a number of other retailers, from Fortnum and Mason to Harvey Nichols, and brand side is with Trish McAvoy, and even The Guardian with Sarah. So we've seen many things and worked with many brands, and equally.
And we've done an array of projects since we established the business. We have helped brands navigate their way through retailers, and that is what we're going to talk to you today. But we've also worked on brands with digital strategies and helping them choose the right channels to support their objectives and goals. So we don't have a one size fits all, I'd say, but we're going to talk to you today about how we work with some of our clients on helping them navigate retailers.
So you've made it through the door, and the sales are starting to come through, which is all fantastic. And there'll definitely be an energy around your brand because you're brand new, you're new to the portfolio, and hopefully you're different enough from the other brands to cause excitement across the board, from customer through to team members. So Sarah and I often hear brands they say, oh, this is amazing. Thank you so much for your help in getting us through the doors. But actually we say to them, well, this is where the hard work begins, because you get through the door, you'll get that support, and certainly in that first month to 6 weeks, the emails will be supporting your brand, social channels, all of those channels that you would expect, and all of that support from the buyers and the teams that you would expect to happen. So what we would say to you is always just take careful consideration and look at these channels. So when an email has gone out, is that what drives your sales? You know, have you noticed it's through social? So every time they post an Instagram post or they flag an event on Facebook, have a look at what's driving it, and also look at the content, because those two things together are key for understanding how you are going to negotiate your brand going forward and the success of your brand going forward as well. It just gives you an understanding of what channels work for you and actually what you should be asking for once all the excitement has died down.
And as Steph mentioned, it's definitely not about taking your foot off the pedal. I think once you're through the doors, and it's definitely a big step to get to a retailer, noticing your brand and agreeing to take on your brand. But now is not the time to sit back. Now's the time when you really have to do the hard work and support the retailer in driving sales.
So location, and it's often revered as one of its key necessity, certainly for achieving great sales in a physical retailer for sure. And one of the tips we always give our clients is to do your homework prior to being in a retailer. So you want to make sure that before you've gone to your chosen retailer, that you've stood in that space, in that beauty hall, or in that studio space, wherever you're going as a brand, and you want to just monitor that traffic. So look at who the customer is, where they're going, what they're doing, what time of day it is, and when you see that heaviest traffic. So really immerse yourself in your chosen retailer, because once you get into your retailer, it is actually very difficult to change space. So you want to make sure that you've understood where are your competitors, because you want to be with them, because if you want a customer to come and buy your brand, they might, for you, it's an opportunity for them to buy your brand if they're looking at someone else's that's similar to you. And it's also going to be critical for you to get cut through and standing out in what is a house of brands, essentially, in a retailer. So how does that translate to online? So online, you still need to be mindful of physical space, or what I say, virtual space. But this is all about how a customer finds you. So you want to make sure your retailer has put the effective search functions in place. So if you search for your brand, can you find it? Are you in the right categorization? And Sarah and I often say, and I know that she'll add to this, but a consumer can only see what they can see, which is very true online. So you need to make sure your brand is listed at every opportunity.
Yeah, and quite often a customer will search for your brand online before they actually go into a physical space. So it's really important that you're listed in the right places online. A bit later in the presentation, we'll talk to the teams that can help you do that.
So relationship building, this really is the success of your brand at a retailer, so your chosen retailer. So what we're going to take you through today is we're going to break down exactly who these teams are. They're not often brand facing, but they are there and they will take calls from brands. So we're going to give you a few tips from our armory today on teams that we think will help you. So let's start with PR, and it's a very important lever for marketing, but it is just one lever, but they are hugely, really great at driving brand awareness. So, and whilst you've got complementary access, if you like, to the press, remember they don't work for your brand. So it's always important that you're treating these people that they are working for a retailer. However, saying that, what is the opportunity with these teams? They're definitely in daily conversation with all of those key publications and journalists, so right across the board. And there's always going to be that one influencer that you've always wanted to try and get hold of. This team will definitely have them on their radar. And no doubt they'll be talking to them on a regular basis. And remember that journalists are often plying these teams with help. We're writing an article on sustainability. Send me some brands that that would fit within the health and beauty arena, for instance, or the fragrance arena, whatever or fashion, whichever brands that you're with. And ultimately, it's about being able to get product into the hands of journalists in an easy way. So I would say our recommendation is with this team is that you get to know who they are, you meet them for a coffee, and you share your wisdom, because as the owner founder, you're going to have that passion which can only truly come from you. And you need to talk about the key USPs for your brand and just jog their memory. So when they're talking to people, it's like, oh, actually, I can recommend X because of X, Y, Z. So it's a really good team to, especially if you don't have your own PR team or you've not invested in an agency as yet.
But even alongside that, with your own PR teams, make sure that these internal teams are on their radar. It's quite often that PR representatives will speak directly to journalists and forget that the retailers also have PR teams that they should be speaking to, because they can also flag when there's an opportunity for your brand to be included in a story that they're doing. So moving on to marketing, and marketing is a huge word and a huge umbrella, and it means so different in every retail business. It's set up in a completely different way. And believe me, if Steph and I had an org chart that was a one size fits all, I think we'd be millionaires by now, because the structures are so diverse across the board. But just to break it down for you with some of the teams that fall under the marketing umbrella. Well, first of all and foremost, you've got the category managers. It's likely that these would be your representatives and key contacts for when you're talking to somebody from the marketing teams. but they have the access and levers to pull with other elements within their marketing teams. And this is how you can get your brand supported and into the eyes and hands of a consumer. So who exactly are we talking about when we talk about marketing? So in terms of digital, you've got your performance marketing teams, and these can include channels with supporting marketeers behind them. This includes paid search, SEO, and affiliates. They do come with costly budgets associated with these channels in order to drive performance, with the exception of SEO. But this is really something that you should focus on for lower down the funnel activity. So when we're talking about performance marketing, this is the team you want to talk to if you really want to invest budget in a lower channel performance. Then we've got own channels, and we're talking mostly around email and app. And this is where you can learn a lot about your customer and segments and how you can get performance from a known database. And this sits also with CRM and insights, and the two go hand in hand. So if you want to be talking to a customer in terms of retention, these are the sorts of channels you can look at doing. And retailers will often have access to you getting solus opportunities, which is not always the best opportunity for your brand, but this is one of the ways that you can buy support for getting to a known customer. We also then have social, and this can sit within PR, marketing, performance marketing. There's definitely not a one size fits all, but it really is, you know, the channel that's most the buzz channel, let's say. And there's different ways you can access social, but a real one worth getting your hands around and understanding what platforms are available for social coverage. And then we have partnerships and events, and this is often associated with experiential opportunities, mostly free but can be paid for opportunities, but this is largely around in-store events, and apart from what we've seen over the last 18 months or so with virtual. But this can be your opportunity to really access VIPs and personal shopping if you look to go with these kinds of opportunities.
And also, just to add to what Sarah was saying, I think with that is that post-COVID, or coming out of COVID, as we all know, that experiential retailers and brands are going to be the winners out of all of this.
And really, even though we've just touched on a few teams, there are more extensive teams within the marketing bucket. We haven't even mentioned brand, and that just touches on schemes, and that's not usually a brand-facing team, but it is an opportunity for your brand to sit within a scheme, such as Christmas. How does your brand sit within a retail story? So look at what marketing tools are available to you. And if you look at how you can actually do that with the myriad of teams that you have available to you, this is really what's going to drive the performance of your brand. And there will be paid opportunities, there'll be packages that you can get involved with. Some brands take the opportunity to purchase a window. Is this really what you want to be doing? Talk to your contact in your marketing team, and they'll give you the opportunities of where your brand can sit and what opportunities there are for you to get involved in terms of marketing support. And then if we talk about the trading teams, and these are often overlooked, but these are a really important and crucial team within the business. They're essentially your real estate go-to for online. They control where your brand is seen on a retailers.com. They control how much editorial coverage you get, and they control where your brand appears in search results. They're often brand facing, so take the opportunity to reach out and find out who these teams are. They're the ones that can be responsible for out of stocks often, and helping sure that your images are always showing your product to the best ability. They represent your brand as much as you do. So make sure this is a team that you're getting to know.
So the retail team, taking it back to the physical store, bricks and mortar, as we often say in the industry, these teams are really considered king in a good retailer, as they're the very eyes and ears of the customer. So they're actually, like your team members, they are the ones that are interacting with the customer on a daily and hourly basis, as we know. So they are heavily KPI'd on sales as a team, so they will be doing all that they can and all that they need to really drive the sales, and they will be tasked heavily, obviously, on their areas. So they are definitely the team to get to know. So the person that manages your area And they can vary from supervisor right up to divisional manager to, obviously area manager, I guess, of the space, depending on the retailer. All of them are important and will hold different keys to helping your brands survive, but also get more sales. And equally, you are going for the same goal. So it's definitely worth talking to them. I mean, an obvious one, but one that often gets neglected, and particularly coming out of COVID, that's been one thing that we've been talking to our clients about, is making sure that training is up to date. And if it isn't your own individual team member, quite often you find that retailers will have staffing that are across many brands. So it's just making sure that they are, understanding your brand. And again, it's delivering that passion that you will have as a creator or brand founder around this. So make sure you're on their side. You don't want to be the kind, certainly working with retailers or the retail team, they will definitely, if they are having a floor walk with, let's say, the MD or the store managers, if they're coming around, you quite often find stock is moved away if there's not enough of it. So really make sure that you are looking and working with this team, because they will give you those tips. They'll help you connect to other departments. They will help you connect to perhaps dual siting opportunities. And also remember, they are across so many brands. I mean, thousands of SKUs like the buyer, but they are seeing so much, and they're seeing so much, experiential opportunities, gift with purchase, if that's relevant to your retailer, whatever it is, they've seen it and they know what works, because they will definitely know their customer. So a really good team to get to know.
So we touched on quite a few teams, and I'm sure you've made notes on the various ones that Steph and I have spoken about, but we thought we'd just bring to light some of the other teams that aren't always customer facing and don't always get the praise that they are due, but it's definitely worth having them in the back of the mind. So first of all, sustainability, and this has really come into its own over the past few years. Steph and I know from being at Selfridges for a number of years that the rise in sustainability is just getting more and more, and the demand is increasing. They're not brand facing as mentioned, but they are often the decision makers in terms of how your brand can fit into a sustainability edit, and they might often test out your brand and your credentials. So it's worth having these kinds of teams in the backs of your mind, because they're only going to continue to grow. Editorial and creative are responsible for telling your brand story. So you want to feel confident that this team is taking the story of your brand and saying exactly what you wanted to say to the consumer. They're storytellers. So make sure that they've got the story that you want them to tell in the right way. Make sure that you feel confident that they're going to do that for you. International can mean so many different things, and can just be specific to marketing or trading or localized language. But it's making sure that you are across this team, so you know that you're the experts in this, because you know where your brand is suited. So if there is a particular market that you think your brand is perfect for, make sure this team has it on their radar. And we briefly mentioned VIP and personal shopping previously, but this is really an opportunity for you to drive retention. This is a really important segment within a retailer's customer market. They often will contribute to a huge proportion of the annual revenue. So making sure your brand is in front of them can be key for you, as well as the retailer. So having that conversation with your marketing contact, speak to their CRM and analytics teams, and see if there's an opportunity for you to incentivize any VIP or personal shopping opportunities. And a lot of these could happen around Christmas and peak times, or through key calendar events throughout the year. But having your brand top of mind for these kinds of opportunities could really be a huge opportunity for you as well.
And I think, again, just to add to that, before we move on, is that these teams are often not connected, shall we say, to the buyers. So the buyers don't sit down with a sustainability team and decide what products they're going to use. That the choices are often made through these teams, where they're looking at products they might be sifting through online, or it's all about getting into their heart, basically their minds, basically. And getting them to understand who you are as a brand, and finding the right people to do that.
So one of our favorite things that we say as
Yes.
S&S is to say winning both hearts and mind. So what we mean by that is, how can you stay ahead of the trends? Often a retailer is not necessarily interested in trends, and they might certainly create their own trends when they're talking about schemes. So it could be up to you and your brand to identify exactly what kind of trend you want to be fitting into. And that can be talking to your buyer, your marketing contacts, and identifying a trend which you really think is a storytelling opportunity. Present that as an opportunity for them to have editorial support, and how that can grow to maybe even cater to wider brands. But it's really how you can start to sell your story and sell the brand story, and in an approach that a retailer has a unique story to tell on your behalf.
So for as long as you're with your retailer, the most regular dialogue you are going to have will be with the buyer. And one of the things, I mean, this is, I feel like our clients are often saying is, how do we reach the buyer? How do we get hold of them? And it's hard even when you're in the retailer. So it's about finding, there's a number of things. If we take a step back, and it's about keeping those buyers informed with as much information that you can give them up front. So it's about them being able to plan. So, we understand as a team that often, brands don't want to give away their secrets of new brands that are launching or new products that are coming out. But actually, if you can give a 12-month forecast to a buyer, it helps them plan. It allows them to then plot this in already into their calendars. It allows them to think Christmas if they're only in February, because trust me, in a retailer, you'll be thinking Christmas all year, and January is no exception. You come out of Christmas and you start thinking about Christmas for the following year or that year. So all of this will help in the planning stages, and they can then escalate this and to the merchandise teams and the allocators who are responsible for stock, because remember, the buyer is the one with the eye that brings the product in, and they often have a team that are telling them yes or no when it comes to money. So it's all about the merchandise. So the merchandise and allocators generally. So making sure that this is upfront, and particularly if you're forecasting a product that may be an A launch for you. So it's making sure that that is on their radar straight away. So how do you speak to them? Of course, email is the obvious one, but our email inboxes, and I'm sure each and every one of us today will find that we've got a real overload of emails that are coming in from all directions. You've signed up to publications. They will be the same. They've got different things coming in at different points. They've got meetings throughout the day, Zoom at the moment, obviously. But actually, it is very true. They are dealing with thousands of SKUs. And if they have a brand, even if they had 30 brands a day trying to reach them, that is just 30 brands they're dealing with, and maybe 30 brands that they're not dealing with that are trying to get through the door. So find that style of communication that works for you and for them. Maybe ask them, who can I talk to? Do you prefer me to maybe instant message you? Do you keep your phone on you? Maybe it's all about WhatsApp. So it's thinking a little bit more out of the box when it comes to dealing with them. And one of the things that also brands have, we must have our sales information, which we understand that, but it's about how often do you need that information? Because if every brand was asking for that on a weekly basis, that's tricky. So you're entitled to get it, and they will share it with you. So maybe it's about let me speak to the buyer and find out who could pull this information for me, maybe once a month. So you've got your monthly figures that you can tally up. And so if that makes you feel a bit more comfortable.
So just before we wrap up, Steph and I created a checklist to help you digest all the information that we've talked through today. So let's starting with making sure that you've taken the time to introduce yourself to the internal retail teams. And have you connected with the wider marketing teams where you can? Continue to seek out opportunities to get your product into people's hands. Keep an eye on your competition and know your trends. Keep that dialogue going with your buyer and find a way to make the communication easy and digestible for both parties. Don't assume that just because you've given the information to the buyer that it's been fed to the various teams we've spoken to today. Yeah. You can't expect to see a product featured on an email if the right teams don't know about it. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Steph and I talk through how to navigate a retailer today. We'd love to hear from you, and our S&S store is always open. We're always available for a natter or just for a soundboarding. But please do get in touch, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Hi. Well, Steph and Sarah, I just want to thank you so much. It kind of brought it all back to me, because Stephanie, certainly we've known each other for 25 years probably, and you helped me in my role get many fantastic launches and brands into your store, and I think today was really helpful. We will also share this presentation on social media, so anyone that has missed it will get to see it. And wishing you a wonderful day, and to all of